So the neurosurgeon now diagnoses me with the spondylolisthesis, this broken back, and says, Joel, no physical activity, get a desk-based job, stop your personal training because you're going to land up in a wheelchair. Now those words did not psychologically break me down. In fact, they gave me inspiration. They gave me this spark of energy to seek out the best education and the best people to help me, give me the ability to look after my own spine. A few years after my diagnosis, I was given a book, and I was told to read this book because possibly it was the thing that could help me navigate through this sort of mound of noise of low back rehabilitation. Anyway, the book that was given to me is this exact book right here. It was the first edition of Prof. Stu McGill's book, Low Back Disorders. Anyway, like a kid in a candy store, I read that book from cover to cover, and I tried to learn as much as I could from Dr. McGill's research about how the spine works and how it breaks down and how it gets injured and what you can do to build it back up. And that led me 2 years later to meeting Dr. McGill face-to-face here in London, and he was very generous enough to give me a 3-hour assessment to determine exactly what was causing my pain, because the diagnosis of a spondylolisthesis doesn't tell me what I actually can or cannot do with regards to physical activity. It just tells me that I have a broken spine. So through the assessment, we determined that the most provocative movement was compression. So that's essentially where, if I just use my little model, if you sort of have this load running directly down through your spine by, let's say, putting a load on your back or putting a barbell or putting your kids on your shoulders, that was the exact thing that was causing my pain to flare up. So Dr. McGill gave me 2 things. He taught me a whole bunch of exercises with regards to modifications of my daily movements, but also he gave me 3 exercises to build up the endurance of the muscles around my spine. And these 3 exercises are famously known today as the McGill Big 3. So armed with that, I went back into the environment that I was most comfortable with, and that's the gym environment. I'd been inside the gym since I was 13 years old. I'd been strength training and weightlifting, and I knew how to negotiate and navigate my way around the gym. So I took the movements that Dr. McGill had given me, and I applied the mechanics and that work to trying to understand how to modify exercises in the gym so that I could continue to train, continue to get strong, to get healthy without flaring up my back. So what I would do as an example is I would take the barbell back squat, which was a movement that I couldn't tolerate anymore. It was the exact movement that was flaring me up. And I would deconstruct that movement and determine what modifications would I need to do to be able to continue to squat without flaring up my back. And I would experiment. Would I need to hold a kettlebell or a dumbbell in front of me and do something called the goblet squat? Could I take a barbell and could I front squat? And I would try certain exercises. Some would flare me up. For 2, 3, 4, 5 days after my exposure to that exercise, I really wouldn't feel good. And I would write down exactly, nah, that exercise right now is not for me. And then I would try others. So I would expose myself to that exercise and see how I felt a day or 2 later. Okay, and did that work for me? And if it did, I would start to include that in my program. And the more I did this, the more I had that ability to look at an exercise and strip it right back to its absolute basics to determine if that exercise was either good for me or if it was something that needed to be avoided. So now, that also taught me something. It taught me that unless a back pain patient has red flags and has an emergency situation, back pain is a very surmountable musculoskeletal issue. What you need is you need to determine what's causing that back pain. It's not just an MRI scan, but you need to understand what movements are causing your pain. And if you can modify those movements and you can have an understanding as to how best to avoid those movements that cause your pain, and then get into an environment that can allow you to exercise and continue to get strong and healthy and fit, whatever that environment is, what suits you. As I said to you, the gym suits me, right? That's what I wanted to continue. I wanted to continue my weight training and my weightlifting, and then build up a whole host of exercises, right, that your spine can tolerate and your tissues can tolerate. That is a really good recipe for success. And that's exactly what I did. I spent hours upon hours understanding how to deconstruct the exercises. And the funny thing is, I still do that to this very day, so that I can allow my patients to succeed as best as they can. Because everyone who comes to see me still wants to continue to get healthy, to get fit, to get strong. Being healthy way up to your ripe old age is extremely important. So that's why any type of physical activity that you can do that doesn't flare up your spine is extremely important. But one of the most gratifying sensations I ever had was to know that those words that resonated in my head over and over again, Joel, you're going to land up in a wheelchair, never came true. I wouldn't let them come true, and I wouldn't allow that neurosurgeon's words to overcome my psyche and get the better of me, because I always knew that there was a solution. I always knew that I needed to work really hard to understand exactly what my spine could tolerate and what it couldn't. But one thing I wanted to do, I wanted to prove that neurosurgeon wrong.